Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving deep into World War II, a conflict that redrew the map of the world and echoed throughout the 20th century. We're not just talking about battles here, but moments and decisions that determined the fate of nations. Millions of souls caught in the machinery of war, fighting and dying in the air, on land and at sea. From the frozen Eastern Front to the sweltering jungles of the Pacific, the air crackled with violence. Over the next hour, steel yourselves because we're about to journey through some of the most significant and brutal battles in human history. Picture this, 1940. The world is engulfed in the flames of war. The Nazi war machine has rolled over most of Europe, leaving a trail of destruction and despair in its wake. France, Belgium, the Netherlands, fallen like dominoes, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. Only one nation stands defiant: Great Britain. Under the leadership of Winston Churchill, the British resolve is unyielding. The Luftwaffe swarms across the English Channel, raining bombs on British cities, factories, airfields. The Blitz has begun, and the nights are filled with the sounds of sirens and explosions. Their objective? To cripple the Royal Air Force, the last line of defense against a full-scale invasion. Young RAF pilots, many barely old enough to shave, thrust into combat. These brave souls take to the skies, knowing the odds are against them. The skies over southern England are a maelstrom of screaming engines and exploding aircraft. Dogfights rage as Spitfires and Hurricanes clash with Messerschmitts. The British people, from the pilots to families in bomb shelters, held their nerve. They endure the nightly bombings with a stoic determination. The RAF, though outnumbered, fought with a ferocity that stunned the Luftwaffe. Their skill and bravery turned the tide of the battle. The Battle of Britain was a turning point, proving that Hitler could be stopped. It was a victory not just for Britain, but for the free world, a beacon of hope in its darkest hour. June 22nd, 1941. A date that would mark the beginning of one of the most brutal and extensive campaigns in military history. Hitler turns his gaze eastward towards the Soviet Union, envisioning a swift and decisive victory that would crush the communist regime. Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history, was set into motion. It was a gamble of unprecedented scale. 3 million men, thousands of tanks and aircraft, unleashed in a tide of steel and fire, moving with a terrifying precision and speed. A front stretching from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea, covering vast and varied terrains, was now a theatre of war. German soldiers, driven by the belief in their invincibility, advanced towards the heart of Russia, encountering little resistance initially. The Red Army, vast but ill-prepared, faced the Nazi onslaught with outdated equipment and poor strategic planning. The initial German advance was breathtaking, a blitzkrieg that seemed unstoppable, cutting through Soviet defenses like a knife through butter. Soviet forces, caught off guard and unprepared, were decimated. Entire divisions were wiped out in the blink of an eye. Cities bombed into rubble, entire armies encircled and destroyed. The devastation was beyond comprehension. The road to Moscow seemed open, a clear path for the German forces to march into the Soviet capital. But the Russian winter, harsh and unforgiving, turned the ground into a frozen quagmire, halting the German advance. The German advance stalled, bogged down in a war of attrition as the elements and the resilient Soviet resistance took their toll. The Red Army, regrouping and rearming, fought back with tenacity, launching counterattacks that stunned the Germans and began to turn the tide. The invasion of Russia would become the turning point of the entire war, a monumental struggle that would shape the course of history. Stalingrad. The name conjures images of urban warfare at its most brutal, a place where the very essence of human endurance and resilience was tested to its limits. The battle that raged here in the winter of 1942 to 43 became a byword for human suffering and military sacrifice. Soldiers on both sides faced unimaginable horrors, fighting not just for territory but for survival. Imagine a city transformed into a charred wasteland where every building bore the scars of relentless bombardment. Buildings reduced to skeletal husks, standing as grim reminders of the ferocity of the conflict. Streets littered with debris, the air thick with smoke and death. The very atmosphere seemed to choke the life out of the city. For months, German and Soviet forces clashed in hand-to-hand combat, each side determined to break the other's will. Every basement, every sewer became a battlefield. The fight extended into the very bowels of the city, where darkness and despair reigned. The German Sixth Army found itself trapped, surrounded by Soviet troops. Their situation grew increasingly desperate as supplies dwindled. Hitler refused to allow a retreat, condemning his soldiers to a grim fate. His orders were clear: no surrender, no retreat. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers, trapped and starving, were forced to surrender, their faces etched with the agony of defeat and the relief of survival. Stalingrad marked the end of the German advance in the east. It was a pivotal moment in the war, shifting the balance of power. It was a turning point, a victory bought with the blood of millions. The sacrifices made here would echo through history, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for both destruction and endurance. June 6, 1944. D-Day, the largest amphibious invasion in history. On the beaches of Normandy, the fate of Western Europe hung in the balance. Thousands of ships, a vast armada converging on the Normandy coastline. Allied soldiers stormed ashore, met by a hail of German gunfire. The beaches became killing grounds littered with bodies, but the Allies fought their way off the beaches, establishing a foothold in Nazi-occupied France. D-Day was a symbol of hope, a beacon to the oppressed peoples of Europe. June 1942, the Battle of Midway. A battle that would decide the fate of the Pacific War. Vast aircraft carriers, floating fortresses, launching wave after wave of fighters and bombers. The Japanese sought to crush the American fleet. The Americans needed a victory. In daring air attacks, American dive bombers crippled the Japanese fleet, sinking 4 carriers. It was a decisive victory, a turning point in the Pacific War. December 1944. The war in Europe seemed to be winding down, but in the Ardennes forest, Hitler unleashed one final gamble, the Battle of the Bulge. American troops were shocked by a massive German offensive. Tanks and infantry surged forward, hoping to split the Allied lines. The fighting was fierce, the weather atrocious. American troops fought desperately to hold back the German onslaught. Reinforcements arrived, and the German advance was halted. The Bulge was Hitler's last gasp, sealing the fate of the Third Reich. Of the Pacific War, a brutal island-hopping campaign. From Guadalcanal to Iwo Jima, American forces clawed their way across the Pacific, landing craft disgorging Marines onto fortified beaches. Japanese soldiers fighting with fanatical zeal, defending every inch. Each island was a fortress, each battle a bloody slog. The closer the Americans got to Japan, the fiercer the resistance. Kamikaze pilots crashed their planes into American ships. The island-hopping campaign was a testament to American determination, but it came at a terrible cost. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more historical content. See you next time.